In the year 2017, America lost 12,300 homes to wildfires burning them down. And what that is basically saying is we really don't know what we're doing about eliminating the loss of these critical sites. The climate has changed. It's got more to do with that, but we should have been able to respond and adapt to make ourselves more effective, but we aren't. And we're losing these houses more and more. The fires are starting. We've got so many houses out in the fuels, so few firefighters, so few fire trucks, that it's just not working. And the two things that firefighters can't bring to the scenario is they can't bring time and they can't bring space. So what we're going to have to do is convert the homeowners, the people who live in the wildland interface, convert them into a resource. And basically, they have to shape the battle space around their critical site so that it gives the firefighters a head start. Everything is ready so they can, in 15 minutes, fireproof the building so that the large firestorm is heading towards the structure can't reach it and burn it down. And okay, so what that is going to entail is the firefighters learning a new skill. It's a military defensive skill. It's got not much to do with firefighting. Firefighters are used to going out squirting water and digging line, and they're not used to trying to prevent houses from burning down. They really don't know what they're doing on that. So this is a universal blueprint to be used for all structures in the fuels. And we're going to start with just one house, but if there are subdivisions and settlements, what you can do is just build the concept around the entire subdivision and settlement. But it's a real strange, difficult transition. It requires a completely different way of looking at the situation. But if we're going to have houses survive and people survive, we have to do something besides what we're doing, because what we've got is not working. So anyways, we'll start out with a house in a natural forest type ecosystem. And basically everything is interlocked, connected. The ground fuels, the area fuels, everything is all meshed together. And the fire will move and take out the house. There's just no question about it. And now what we're doing is we're having everybody evacuate and just accept the loss. That's just what's going on. So the first thing we want to do, we want to create defensible space. And that's the start. It's not the end all, but it's a start. So here's what it looks like. We've thinned and pruned. We separated our heavy fuels. We've taken out all the interlocking fuels and just separated through thinning and pruning. And we've just got the large leaf trees and the light fuels and grasses and so forth around the house. Well, what you get when you do this is a trade-off. You trade heat holding calories for speed. In other words, left as is, this isn't going to help the house at all. The fire, whatever direction it comes from, will just go across the light fuels faster than it ever did, and it's going to burn the house down. There's no question about it. Okay, so what we will do is we're going to build permanent circular rings, the control lines. And what I've done is they only need to be about 2 feet wide And what I've done is dig down about 6 inches into the ground, laid plastic down, plastic sheeting, and then put gravel on top. What that does is it makes them permanent in the pioneer species of grasses and so forth are slower to come in. It still has to be maintained, but this is what we're going to have to revert to. And you start off right at the critical site. You put your first circular control line in around the thing that you want to protect. And this should be a complete circular patio, maybe out 8 feet, 10 feet, if you can handle that much space. But even 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, that will work, okay? But it's completely all around. That's your first dragon ring, circular ring. Okay, then you go out 100 feet beyond that, and you establish your second ring. Okay, so it's a circular ring, and it's meandering. It's not just a total circle. It's just a meandering. It looks like a little trail. When it's set in out 100 feet away from the house, it's not that unaesthetic. So it's pretty good. But that's only 100 feet. We got to really go 200 feet to keep all the flames away from the house, okay? Okay, this is your universal Dragon Slayer blueprint, and it'll apply anywhere, every wildland interface ecosystem. And all right, so what good is that, having circulars? Well, the thing about circular control lines is the wind is always blowing in the right direction for a very systematic, controlled blacklining and turning the entire space of this into a black spot where fire can't march up and consume the structure. The fire coming will go around the spot. And in the smoke jumper annals of history, the classic example was Wagner Dodge. He parachuted in. There were 13 other smoke jumpers with him, and he basically, they jumped on a ridge top. The fire was down across the draw below them, so they got together, they got their tools. The fire wasn't doing much, just a small smoke coming up. So then they had lunch, and then they continued down the slope, and all of a sudden the fire really kicked off. The wind drove it with the slope, and it was coming up at them so fast, it was obviously a real threat and dangerous situation. They couldn't run away cross a slope, nor could they really go upslope. So Wagner Dodge decided they couldn't outrun it. So what he tried to do is get his crew to stay with him, but with the noise and the roar of the fire, all the different tools clanking and people talking, they couldn't hear him. They didn't understand what he was doing. But what he was doing is he just got some matches out and he started firing off grass right above him, because he's in a big meadow of grass. That's all it was there. And basically the people must have thought he was, what is he doing? He must have lost it. He's adding more fire. Doesn't make any sense. So the natural instinct of these firefighters was to run for it, run for their lives, and they tried to run upslope. And two of them actually made it through a break in the rim rock, and they made it up over to a rock scree on the other side of the ridge. but the other people were overtaken by the fuels, by the flames in the light fuels, and they inhaled the superheated air, and what it did is it really blistered their lungs, caused them all to basically drown in their own fluids. Except at Wagner Dodge, what he did was he just waited for the fire to move through the grass, and then there was no heat holding ability when grass, it's a light fuel. He got up and laid down in the black spot that was formed, and the fire really came hard at him, but it got to his black spot and it went around him, and he said he was buffeted up and down on the ground, but he survived, and he wasn't damaged. He wasn't hurt. And in the inquiry, the investigation, they had a court hearing sort of thing, and he was asked, had you ever been trained in this thing that they called an escape fire? And he said no. He said it just seemed like the logical thing to do at the time because we couldn't outrun it, and it just is what I decided to do for my immediate survival and to trying to get the crew to survive. But anyway, that's what should have been learned is the reality is more people die in grass fires and light brush fires than any other kind of fuel. It's the fastest moving fuel type. It's a Model 1 fuel, they call it. And same thing in the eastern United States when there's no green trees or anything. It's just leaves on the ground. These fires are so dangerous. And like even a year ago in 2016 in November, they had the entire town of Gatlinburg, Tennessee, burned down. There was 2,500 structures lost, 12 people died, and something like 50 businesses destroyed. And it was in November. But the fact was, we just haven't figured out what to do to survive, to have our structures survive. And like I say, just defensible space alone, bad deal. I just had a friend this summer, had a beautiful cabin house in Colorado, and plenty of defensible space, and forest was all around, plenty of the classic stuff that they tell you. Some deputy dogs came, sheriff, and said, you got about 6 hours, but you got to get out of here. Just leave. Take what you can and leave. And so that's what they did. They did what they were told, and of course the fire came. There wasn't going to be anybody to take care of their house. So his house and all the houses around burned down. Plenty of defensible space. So defensible space is a theory that should work on. It does work on fires that aren't extreme, but if you got firefighters come and they can basically squirt water and everything, hold the fire at bay. But they're not going. But since we had so many fire fatalities, firefighters are not going to enter in front of the head of an oncoming firestorm and try to do something to save a house. So really, the people who own the houses, they have to become more of a military defender of their turf than anything that the firefighters know, because they don't know this technique and they just assume that get out of there. So here's what we have figured out will work. I've got a little whiz wheel. I got these little things that are 8 inches in square, and they have a little wind direction arrow on it. Okay, so you can pick a fire, and it doesn't matter where the fire is coming from. all you need to know is where to lay and start your black lining operation. It's a black lining operation, and the heavy fuels are separated from your ground fuels, okay? So it's a managed fuel situation. So what we got to do now, though, is also realize that we have to separate our light fuels so that we can systematically release all the calories in this black, which will be eventually a black spot. Okay, let's say the fire is coming from this direction. All we do is we have a little gauge, and then what we do is follow this, and we lay the first strips of fire from a propane torch or a drip torch right against the line. No matter how strong the conditions are, the flame lengths never get very strong. They don't have enough fuel, and then what they do is they just peter out and they get to the line. And then they'll also start back burning this way into the fuels. So then you go down and you do the other semicircle, and eventually these, you can strip it again and help it, and basically you have the first outer black donut, okay? That's what we call it. That's a smoke jumper. So I did this as a fire management officer in Alaska, and we used smoke jumpers for the BLM and the Forest Service, and of course they called us the black donut of death method, and that's kind of a donut. Okay, so then you do the same thing with the inner ring, okay? You lay the fire right against the house, and it blows in, and then of course you can lay it here. It doesn't matter now, we can go anywhere here, and it's all going to blacken. So now you figure this is about almost an acre in size, really, when you put it in, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes for the entire black spot to be formed. So that is what we have to start teaching both the firefighters and the homeowners. Now, like when we lost the 19 Granite Mountain hotshots, there was a situation there that the new fire ops chief came on the fire, and of course he didn't know where everybody was, but it was obvious that there were 150 some odd houses that were in light fuels, lots of defensible space around them, but basically they were going to be burned over. They could see the fire was coming towards them. So there was no plan, there was no option to revert to when they couldn't stop the fire. So what really, talked to many of the hotshots that were on that fire, and basically what they really think should have happened is the local fire department should have shown these people how to set up their own houses so that it could be black lined around it, and then if the firefighters couldn't get there, they could have saved their own houses. And then what really happened is the ops chief or the incident commander, whoever it was, called for these hotshots to come and try to save the houses. And of course, the leader of the crew said, well, no, we can see the best place for us is right in the black, the place that's already been burned. And if we have to head towards the houses, we're going to be in the unburned fuels, or 15 feet of chaparral, and it's too dangerous. And then he got the old crew leader, and the crew leader got into a little argument, big argument, and finally he was convinced to try to take his crew down, to try to help them get to the houses. And of course they didn't make it. And then the old crew leader ran up, realized he had really made a big mistake, and he ended up dying with the crew too. But this is what we have to do. Like, for example, in 1996, they had a horrible fire season in Texas, okay? Texas had lost 1,000 homes that year. Okay, so Governor Bush at the time, he basically got all the Texas Forest Service together and just said, okay, look, we can't have this happening again. What do you need so that the people of Texas never have to undergo this type of loss again? And so everybody there said, oh yeah, we know what to do. Oh yeah, okay. So what they did is they put enormous numbers of new fire trucks, brush trucks, overhead people, big expansion of the whole number of firefighters, enormous numbers of common sense things. They went ahead and got outreach vehicles set up to go out, try to explain defensible space to the people. Okay, so I tried to, went down to the Texas Fire Academy and tried to explain, look, this is what you're doing is not going to work. And they wouldn't listen. They thought, no, they got all the money, they got all the trucks, they got all the things they need. Everything will be fine. They'll never have losses like this again. Then 2011 comes. What happened? They lost 4,000 houses. Okay, and so defensible space alone was a disaster. Right a couple of months after this thing happened, the state forester for Texas went to the WOWI meeting in Reno, and he put a show on with all the destroyed houses, slide after slide. Well, 4,000 houses, that was what they lost. But here's the thing, nobody knew enough about what had happened to be able to explain to the state forester what was learned, because they didn't learn anything. Basically, you could see in the pictures that most of the houses burned down were just in grass. There was no interlock, lots of fuels and so forth. And basically, so you had already plenty of defensible space, but nobody there to take the calories out of the grass before in a systematic, organized way, so that the fire would stop and not continue on to destroy the houses. So anyway, but still, nobody in the regular federal and state and local fire departments seem to have learned a thing from all these decades of loss. All they do is just hope for a better fire season and more overtime for the next year, and they do the best they can, and then they say, well, yeah, okay, we got safety first. We don't put ourselves at risk. Well, there's no need to put anybody at risk. Get the people who live in the fuels to understand where they live and what to do in order to set their homes up so that they can be systematically set up so that the fire never gets near the house. So anyway, this is our attempt to help the people who live in the fuels, because they don't seem to be getting too much help from all the well-meaning firefighters out there who just don't understand what has to be done. Okay, thank you.